episode of Pit Lane Parlay.
Welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay. My name is host Mike Jokum. Jess and Matt are joining me. Guys, how are we doing? It's back to race week.
Good.
Not too shabby.
Yay. Before we get started, thank you to our pals at gripmat.com, the world's first flexible non-slip tool mat. Use promo code PLP10 for 10% off. As always, either go to the website or go to the link in our show notes and check out what they have. So, I don't know if you guys know, but there's been some pretty big news in the IndyCar world in the past week. McLaren actually made news, and not just speculation, actual news. This will be their first full-time return to IndyCar since 1979. So before we dive into everything here, guys, what was your initial thought?
I'm stoked. I mean, I wanted this from the get-go, so I can't wait to see how it plays out. Obviously, it's not exactly the way we had kind of anticipated, I guess, that it might happen, but I'm really, really excited.
To me, the announcement came on Twitter. It was honestly a top 5 Twitter day that I've ever experienced, just because, you know, as we're going to dive into here, there's so many facets to just one announcement to kind of discuss, and everybody had opinions on Twitter, and it was just, you know, one headline after the other, and it was just amazing. So to see this news is epic, to say the least.
Yeah, very well said. It definitely woke me up. My phone drained battery quicker than it ever has on an IndyCar news day. Not that it's a bad thing, gives us plenty to talk about, such as, you know, obviously partnering with Arrow Peterson to create the new name that's starting to rival Marco's team name here in terms of length, Arrow McLaren SP. So, guys, are we surprised by Sam Schmidt and Rick Peterson's willingness to partner with McLaren? And then part 2 of my question here is McLaren's, you know, increased involvement good for IndyCar?
Yeah, so part 1, I kind of discussed this with my parents, I don't know, when the first rumors came out about this, and to have built up their team so highly that, you know, they've been discussed about joining the big 3 either this year or next year, to kind of at this point now decide, you know, maybe we should take a step back and partner with McLaren, to me is just kind of weird timing, if I'm being honest. Wasn't what I was expecting at all. When McLaren came out and said they're looking for a team to partner with, conventional wisdom said maybe Andretti, but, you know, the fact that it came down to Schmidt-Peterson was surprising, and good for them, because I definitely think this isn't going to hurt their ownership stake or whatnot as far as increasing the value of the team for sure. So that's good for them. And then with McLaren's involvement in IndyCar, yeah, I mean, just the buzz they generated alone from announcing their return was epic. You know, 2017 when they came back to Indy was epic as far as just creating a lot of attention for the sport. So as long as they don't become to the point where they're one team trying to dictate things as far as rules and things like that, I think McLaren's involvement with sports can be very good for IndyCar.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to agree with them being involved in IndyCar is going to be absolutely. I find it very difficult to find a negative there at all. As far as them being paired with Schmidt-Peterson, I go back and forth on this. Yes, I am a little bit surprised by it, just with all of the different moving parts that had to change for this to happen. But at the same time, I really think that it could be a positive for Schmidt-Peterson. So I kind of feel like maybe, you know, in the background, there were some other things going on where this is actually going to be more of a positive than a negative.
Yeah, very well said on your last statement there. I wasn't super surprised, kind of also going off of what Matt originally said. You know, they were projected to, you know, kind of rival the big 3 this year, and it really hasn't happened. So, you know, maybe they're kind of reassessing everything and just decided, you know what, we need to take a new approach to this. Let's partner with somebody who has a lot of money and a lot of money for research or development, etc. So I'm a little surprised, but I think it's definitely something that I could see working well with Schmidt-Peterson. So not a huge surprise. And is McLaren's involvement good for IndyCar? Yeah, from the fact I had to censor myself, self-censorship there. Just from the fact that they have global partners, that we saw in the car a little bit this year and 2 years ago when Alonso was in the Indy 500, their market share to get bigger sponsors involved will definitely pay dividends for the team and maybe even IndyCar in the long run, that European side of the TV deal here. So just a couple more notes. It is just 2 full-time entries, so the car count isn't changing, which I know everybody is up in arms about on the social media warrior train. There is most likely going to be a 3rd car for the Indy 500 next year in 2020, so we will see where that lands. But probably the most interesting part, or not surprising but interesting, is the Chevrolet aspect of this because of the McLaren-Honda feud, which, Honda pretty much said buzz off no matter what McLaren tried to do. Honda had zero interest. So my first question, guys, is are we surprised that Schmidt-Peterson, who had a long time partnership with Honda, they were just kind of like, all right, see ya, and went to Chevrolet. And as Sam Schmidt said, it was Honda's decision, but really it came down to Schmidt-Peterson wanting to partner with McLaren.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't. It's self-censorship again here. I'm not really sure that it's such a bad thing for them. I mean, like you said, they kind of had a pretty difficult season as far as everything has started to shake out. But I think that in the long run, it's going to be good for them, honestly.
Yeah, I'm part of me's torn because it's for once it's like, Schmidt's been with Honda ever since he joined IndyCar, and I know when he joined the IndyCar series, Honda was the only engine supplier anyways, or at least when he started to get heavily involved. But then when 2012 came around, he's stuck with Honda, and he's one of the few teams that's stuck with the same engine manufacturer since 2012. And to kind of see that thrown out the window to merge with McLaren's a little, I don't know what word I'm trying to say. Bummer, maybe. It's a little bit of a bummer. But the fact that Honda is so adamantly against working with McLaren for, reasons from, stemming from Formula One, to me is also kind of a bummer. So it really depends on which side you're on in that case. And to me, I would rather not go with the petty side in this case. So I'd rather just, Schmidt-Peterson take matters in their own hands and ditch Honda if Honda's not going to be able to get over their, feud with McLaren. So ultimately, I don't really have an issue with them leaving, nor was I ultimately surprised given Honda's unwillingness to kind of make a compromise in any way.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I wonder how much behind the scenes with the McLaren Honda feud we really don't know about, because they're pretty insanely stubborn with this whole process. But I don't really care that Schmidt-Peterson left Honda for Chevrolet. The one thing it does is it balances out the engine count for the full-time cars a little bit more evenly, which maybe allows Honda to have a couple extra engines for the 500. I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing here on my notes, but moving on from that, do we think that McLaren, based on, the power that they pull with such a big name, can pull in maybe somebody like Colton Herta, or I don't know. I don't want to bring up his name because it's been mentioned in articles. I don't think it's likely, but people in McLaren want Pato O'Ward, and I should preface this by saying that would only be if he can get it, or if Red Bull dumps him, I should say. If Red Bull dumps Pato, then McLaren wants Pato. So do we think either of the young guns will end up with McLaren?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first on that one. And actually, to touch on what you had just said with the engine manufacturers, that's actually a really good point when it comes to, if we think about it right now, Ganassi Andretti and Schmidt-Peterson are all with Honda versus basically Team Penske at Chevy. And next year, if McLaren helps elevate Schmidt-Peterson with the Chevy team and Team Penske is a Chevy, that would be actually a pretty good battle between those two Chevy teams and then Andretti and Ganassi on the other side. So that's going to be definitely an interesting storyline going into next year. So that's a good call on your part. As far as the drivers, I based on what I've seen, I don't think Hurt is leaving. And that's just all public knowledge. It's not like I have any background info on that. That's just what I've read. So I don't think Hurt is going anywhere. Pato, I think I'm going to leave my answer to Jess on that one because I think she'll have a better summary for that. What do you think, Jess, about Pato?
I think that there is a 0% chance that Pato will be back. And that's not just with McLaren. So I used to work for Red Bull. The chances of him getting out of that contract are slim to none. And if he does get out of that contract, it will not be a good parting of ways, probably is a good way of putting that. So I see that not happening at all. But as far as Herta, yeah, I could see that. Obviously, I think it would be fantastic move for him. I know that, right now he's got kind of, I guess he's at a learning team, we'll put it, because they're all learning kind of together as they're new also. But I think that it would be good to have some of that Schmidt-Peterson background behind him, and I think he would do really well there. I will not say that it's a super great chance, but I think it would be good.
Fair point. I'm going to put the chances of either of these hypotheticals that I threw at you guys at 0. Obviously, the Herta one, the Andretti ties there, that's pretty much set in stone. And Pato, I asked Pato directly, and he said there's 0 chance unless Red Bull lets him out of his contract, which, as we all know, is probably not very likely. So we'll move on from the young guns. Quick mention of everybody's favorite, maybe IndyCar driver, Fernando Alonso, who Zach Brown said on the IndyCar conference call on Monday that Alonso right now is not considering a full-time ride in 2020, which I guess isn't really too shocking because Alonso's in some sort of semi-retirement, la land. He'll race whenever he wants to. But probably the most fascinating part about all of this, and the one that definitely caught me off guard, is James Hinchcliffe. As soon as the McLaren stuff came out Friday morning, I'm going to ask you guys a question that we didn't discuss beforehand, but when the news came out Friday morning, I guess it was, about the Chevrolet switch, did any of you think Hinch would release the statement that he released?
No. Did I think that he would possibly still be there? Yes. Did I think that it would be like an almost immediate kind of statement? No. So it was honestly just a really interesting day in news.
Yeah, I think the only thing I said on Twitter was just, wow. When he came out and said that, I was kind of reading through it. I'm like, okay, he's saying the right things, blah, blah, blah. And I got to the final paragraph. I'm like, what? No way. Yeah, that was, again, like Mike said, one of the most fascinating parts of the whole day, in my opinion.
Yeah, and a lot of people were going right away, oh, he's going to Ray Hall, or maybe if Ray Hall has a third car, maybe he'll go wherever. I was guilty of discussing the same thing with many people, so I was definitely surprised. Now, the one, I guess, kind of interesting thing, see what you guys think, is Sam Schmidt said, hey, Hinchcliffe is under contract for 2020 and he'll be one of the drivers. He doesn't mention anything about the future. What did you guys take of that?
From literally what he said, I don't know. It's really tough to see him back in 2021, but that's because I'm of the opinion that I still don't even think he's going to be back next year. I think everybody's kind of just toting the party lines and saying what the, media may want to hear when it comes to that regards. Hey, he has a contract. We plan on honoring it. Hinch is going to rekindle his relationship with General Motors, those kind of things. I just don't see it, though. And Apparently, the Honda Canada that sponsors him is different than the Honda Racing. I don't know quite how that works, to be honest. It's all very confusing, but it's just really hard to see him back. And if he is, I will be very shocked, and I'll happily admit that I was wrong.
My only thing that would be odd to me, so there are a lot of companies that operate under the same name but are separate entities. Like, for example, FedEx has several different, FedEx Express, FedEx Ground, FedEx Freight. They all operate separately. So that's kind of how I took the whole Honda thing. But can you actually see Chevy allowing a Honda Canada sticker or something on his car? Because that would be awkward. But other than that, yeah, I hate to say this because a contract should be a contract, but that's not necessarily the case. And I feel like his contract with his team is probably more important to him at the exact moment than his contract with Honda is, just because I feel like he's not had the best few years, so he probably wants to try to prove himself, for lack of a better word. And so staying there would be a good way to do that. There's going to be the money behind the team. There's going to be, I wouldn't say an excessive amount of employees to kind of make these cars exceptionally good. I know they're going to struggle a little bit at the beginning, probably butt some heads and things like that. But I think in the end, they're going to become a very good team. So I think it would be best for him, honestly, to stay where he is instead of with Honda.
Jess, you kind of stole my answer. I'm struggling with how to rephrase that. No, I get his involvement with Honda runs very deep with all the commercials we see here in the U.S., but he's got a contract for a team, and it's settled for 2020 unless something crazy comes along. Why would he not want to honor that contract? He's got a job for 2020, which if you're in the world of living the contract life and you have a job for next year, if I were him, I'm not really trying to ruffle feathers and see what else is out there. But then again, crazier things have happened, like everything we've just talked about for the last 20 minutes. So if he ends up somewhere else, would it surprise me? No, but I think the right move for Hinch is to stay where he is in 2020 and see if he can kind of, get everything back on track for the future.
Yeah, and I completely agree with what you guys are both saying. I just kind of want to be like a devil's advocate here for a second. And so if we play like a hypothetical game, so if Hinch stays with Arrow McLaren, or I don't know if they allow him to stay, or I don't know how that works anyways, but if he's back in the team next year and, that upsets Honda, and then Hinch kind of goes out and lays an egg in the season and is kind of just mid-pack, kind of average, do you think he would look back on his decision kind of not sticking with Honda, and then 2021 comes around, he's kind of, he doesn't have a ride anywhere? Do you think he would come back and look upon the decision and go, wow, maybe I should have stuck with Honda? Or do you think risking it and going with McLaren is the best move for him, thinking very long term?
Yeah, I think you have to risk it. Hindsight's always going to be 2020, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But at the end of the day, he's got the contract for 2020, and Hinch is an honorable guy. He's going to honor that contract. So even if he doesn't have a great year, will he regret it? I'm sure there's things in that hypothetical 2020 season he might regret, but I don't think Hinch should look at it that way if it were to unfold that way.
Yeah, and just to kind of, I guess, expand on that a little bit, because I unfortunately have to agree with you here. I feel like he is not, I kind of said it before, he has not had a great couple of years. So if he kind of put himself out there and people were maybe interested who did have a Honda, let's pretend this Ray Hall Letterman third car comes up, I don't think he's going to regret it. Unless something like crazy happens with that third car, let's say they go out and maybe win the 500 or something like that. I can't see him regretting it, because the chances of that car being like the be all end all is not very good either. I think he has to look long term, and I think that sticking with the team that he's been with and showing loyalty to the team is going to be better for him in the end.
Yeah. And, good answers on both you guys. And to me, again, like, this is why this story is so fascinating. McLaren coming out announcing this just kind of blew the lid off of everything. And there's just been so much discussions, and Hinch has been one of the center points of these discussions. And, these kinds of debates that people like us have been having, and then, everybody out in social media has been having, it just adds another layer to everything. And it's just been incredible last week or so on Twitter.
Good question there, Matt. So real quick, we'll wrap up a couple more McLaren things here. I promise that's not all we'll talk about this week. So first off, do we think Fernando Alonso is going to be the Indy 500 driver for Arrow McLaren Schmidt Peterson racing team?
Kerbagajanian. Yes, I do think he is going to be the Indy 500 driver for that third car.
No doubt in my mind.
All right, that was easy enough. And now this one is a total shot in the dark here. We have hypothetical Hinch in 2020 with the contract, but as we've mentioned, it's subject to maybe change. But if you are looking into the future and it is March of 2020, who is lining up next to Hinch on the Arrow McLaren team?
Can I blow your mind right now?
Go for it.
Fernando Alonso.
Oh, okay. All right.
So he says right now he's not interested in a full-time ride, but we still got a long time till the season starts.
I mean, is she wrong, though? I mean, they changed their minds more than the weather. We're being completely honest here. So, I mean, because what was it? 3 weeks after they got bounced from Indy, it was, I don't see a full-time IndyCar team in the future. And then, like, all of a sudden 3 weeks ago, it was, well, yeah, we're exploring the options. And then now it's signed. So I guess things can change super quick. She's not wrong. Let's see. Who would my two drivers be? Because I'm sticking to my guns and saying that Hinch isn't going to be one of them. So if we're going on that, I'm trying to figure out if they have, like, a development program over in F1 that they might farm out. That's what I was hoping they would do if they would join the grid in 2019, that they would farm out Lando Norris over here. But, obviously he jumped up to F1. So they have a guy in F2 right now, Sergio Seta Camara. Maybe him. That would be a great who for Jess. And
Did you say his name one more time?
Sergio Seta Camara.
Okay. I was just messing with you.
Oh, well, I was expecting a who? I thought that's where that was going. And I feel like they got to go with someone on the IndyCar grid that's currently involved that can definitely establish some veteran leadership, again, assuming they let Hinch go, which is a big assumption on my part. And, who driver who technically has a driver option for next year is Scott Dixon. That's kind of been a minor detail that people have been sweeping under the rug, is that he was under contract for 2019, and then 2020 was a driver option, so it's up to him if he wants to return to Ganassi. And I don't know if I've seen anything Mike Hall saying that he would be back, or Chip Ganassi, or whoever. I mean, Ganassi's going to say that he's probably coming back, but again, it's up to Dixon, so unless Dixon's told him so. And I know McLaren was really big into just trying to sign him last year for their fictitious full-time program. So maybe if, it's definitely, I don't know if it's as bold as Jess's prediction, but I'm going to go with Scott Dixon.
Wow. My answer is going to be really boring. I'm definitely going with Hinchcliffe. I'm going to say he's definitely one of the drivers there. The other, maybe I'll go a little bold here and go with whoever doesn't win the Indy Lights Championship, whoever's the runner-up. If it's Rinus VeeKay, we know he has plenty of money coming. I've mentioned that a couple times in the last few weeks. So I think they'll take a veteran and a young guy approach, kind of like Matt said, but stick to the road to Indy side of things here.
Oh, and also a shout out to Marcus Ericsson too.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'm sure Marcus will be back in IndyCar next year, and I know he's very eager to return. And it seems like not only is he getting displaced, I guess the one thing we forgot to mention is this also displaces the Meyer-Shank Racing partnership, which I'm sure, everybody in the paddock seems to love Michael Shank, and I'm sure he'll either attach himself on to somewhere as looks like they'll expand to a full season. So let's add that in there. Thanks, Matt, for jogging my memory before I move on to the next topic here. Do we see Meyer-Shank Racing, solo next year, or will they still kind of attach themselves in a partnership as they, continue their expansion?
What's another thing that got me thinking was, not too recently, like as we discussed in the last episode, Ray Hall announces, hey, we're looking at that third car. It's looking pretty solid. And we're all thinking, like, where did that come from? So I wonder if they and Shank got together and decided that maybe they're going to throw a partnership and that third car is actually just going to be Jack Harvey. So that's another wrench that got thrown in there. I'm like, maybe. So we'll see. I mean, I think it's going to be Ray Hall, but if not, Ganassi? Question mark?
Yeah, I was going to go with the Ganassi route. I mean, he's looking at that option. He being Ganassi, he's looking at that option to add a little depth to the knowledge for the engineers and such. So that could be an interesting pairing.
You guys have stolen both of my answers, and I'm trying to think of Honda teams off the top of my head that you didn't mention. So I'm just going to go with Ganassi. I think, sorry.
No, I love it.
And for the same reasons you mentioned, we'll leave it at that and move on from McLaren for now. I think our buddy Fo Will Power needs to start the Fred Watch alarm again. Sure, we'll be talking about that plenty.
Strictly on my guess.
Yes.
That's threat level orange now.
Yeah. Definitely heading towards threat level red. But anyway, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome Patreon subscribers. The group chat has been nonstop since the McLaren news. Plenty of great chat there, and a new episode went up on Patreon a couple days ago by the time everybody's listening to this. So if you don't know, check it out. Patreon.com/pitlaneparlay. It's pretty easy. Or if you have any questions, just message any of us hosts here. So with that, it's time for a Stump the Hosts. And being that we are going to Pocono this weekend, and we have talked a lot about Honda and Chevrolet, there have been 6 races since Pocono has reemerged on the IndyCar calendar, and there have been 3 Honda drivers that have won in those 6 years. Can you name them? Jess can go first.
Gosh.
Not a good start.
Scott Dixon.
Okay.
Alexander Rossi.
All right, we got one more.
I don't know.
Matt. He loves boating and fishing.
That clue makes me think it's Santino Ferrucci, and I just know that's not correct. I'm just envisioning him boating with Paul Tracy. It's not Hunter Ray, is it?
It is.
Ah.
Dang it.
2015 was Ryan Hunter-Ray.
I was going to guess that if you didn't.
And a little fun fact that AJ Foyt's last career win in 1981 was at Pocono Raceway in whatever it was, the race was called back then.
Was that a dirt track at that point that Robin Miller's told me about in the mailbag?
No, it was next to Milwaukee.
Oh, I thought that was Cleveland.
Yeah, that too.
Oh, okay.
With that, we have a new jingle here to play before our next segment. So I hope everybody enjoys the Joker Lap intro. Buddy of mine, Eric Hunt, and I worked it together this weekend. So let's dive right into it here in a second.
All right. Are you guys ready?
Probably not.
Yeah, no, you're probably not. So obviously the big news, McLaren. Got to go with something to do with them, right? So we all know, unfortunately, what their downfalls were during the month of May. And we know this because they were brutally honest when maybe they could have just said things like they're not prepared. But not bringing a steering wheel, wrong color paint, forgetting to convert over. Like there's just a lot of issues. Okay, so you guys are going to be helping McLaren to come into this thing smoothly.
Well, they're in trouble.
So obviously they're going to have a lot of help because they are going to have some super great team members coming from Schmidt Peterson and engineers and the whole shebang. It's going to be a great package deal, but I feel like there's going to be a couple bumps in the road. And I want you guys to tell me what those bumps are going to be and how you're going to fix them.
Oof.
Wow. All right. First bump is going to be qualifying in general, how to strategize, the different rounds of qualifying on a road and street course. How am I going to overcome that? I am going to tell them to watch what Team Penske does and emulate that.
Gosh, your answer's so serious. I was thinking something like they needed to bring the water to a certain temperature and they would forget to convert like Celsius to Fahrenheit or something.
That's also a good answer.
They're like boiling their car because they're trying to get it to 300 degrees Celsius when it just needs to be 300 degrees Fahrenheit or something, and their whole car is spontaneously combusting.
That would cause a red flag, and we definitely know that they don't need that.
Yes. I'm trying to think of what else, because one year at Indy, they sent Marco out. They put the right side tires on the left side. His car just wouldn't drive. And to me, I don't know, that kind of seems like something McLaren would do based off what we saw in May. Is that really out of the realm?
No, I think you're right on.
So how are you going to fix that problem, though?
Yeah, I'm at.
Preemptively fire the entire pit crew and hire guys who are going to do it correctly. Is that... I don't know. I would be a terrible
rough.
This question is not meant for me. Listen, guys, we need to let you all go because we're afraid you're going to put the tires on incorrectly.
Well, you're giving them more credit than I am because I'm going to tell you what mine is. Mine is they're going to miss their flight to St. Pete.
Oh, no.
Wow.
They're going to get the time zones all jacked up, and they're going to miss their flight to St. Pete. And I'm going to fix this by chartering a private jet so that we make sure there's a head count before we fly to St. Pete.
I'm going to add one more in here since mine was like way too serious to begin with. Since both Sam Schmidt and Zach Brown on the conference call on Monday mentioned the word papaya orange 740 times in 27 minutes, I am going to order them preemptively, just in case they have any issues with the paint, 700 gallons of papaya orange. You don't have to worry about it. That way, no matter.
And that's going to go on the private jet also.
Yes, we're going to paint everything papaya orange. Shoes, I don't know.
Just in case.
But paint your shoes. Yeah.
Maybe they can send Fred on like a grid walk with like a papaya orange spray can, and then he's spray painting everything he walks past.
Yeah, and he's going to be like the new Banksy in the U.S., just spray paint stuff. But it's going to be very obvious because it's only going to be papaya orange.
What's a Banksy?
Oh, Matt, you need to just Google it. He's a crazy street artist who does really good work.
Jess, do you know what a Banksy is?
I do not.
Okay, see, I'm not the only one. Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
I'm surprised I know pop culture because I usually don't.
Hang on. What we just proved is that 66.7% of Americans don't know who Banksy is. That's kind of what we just concluded.
Our sample size is it's very small.
I like that you came up with that math real fast.
It's 2 divided by 3, Jess.
I know what it is.
No, that's an accurate sample. Us 3 are very representative of the opinions of things like who is Banksy. Is that far off?
We'll make that our one of our Twitter polls for the week.
Just like when you guys came out and bashed little craft singles thing, what I heard was that 33% of America likes craft singles.
I have nothing else to add to that.
This is a terrible idea. This is like, honestly, if that's how we're going to work things, if our opinions are going to be like cast over America's perception on stuff, we're in rough shape.
Yeah, we are.
Anyways, in typical pit lane parlay fashion, right after we recorded an episode, the next day there was some pretty big news that came out. And this one was with Connor Daly, Connor Daly and Andretti Autosport, which they did a really cool announcement on Twitter if you didn't get a chance to catch it. Connor Daly is going to be back with Andretti Autosport at Laguna Seca with United States Air Force backing. So really good for him to get another shot, double points race. Obviously he's nowhere near the championship, but just, get some solid points on the board and hopefully put up a good showing for maybe next year. But some questions for you guys is, one, are you surprised by the deal? And then two, is this an indication of bigger things coming in 2020 for Connor?
Go ahead, Jess.
Okay, I was going to say I'm not really surprised by the deal at all. I think he did a very good job and had a good showing for the Air Force at Indy. So I can't be surprised at all. Do I think it's an indication of next year? Gosh, I wish I could say yes. I'm just not sure yet.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either for Laguna. I know he's been pretty open about wanting to get one more Andretti deal, race in before the end of the year. And good for him. It's, he gets to do something else other than, the ovals he's done with Carlin this year. Is it a sign of things to come for 2020? Unfortunately, I don't think so. With all this Colton Herta talk taking the 5th seat, I don't think Andretti is going to have a 6th full-time seat for Connor available unless the Air Force significantly ups their budget or he comes across another huge sponsor. So I don't think it's unfortunately going to help him for more in 2020.
Yeah, so part 2 of my answer will basically just be what Mike said. 100% agree with that. Part 1 is not super surprised by the deal, and I'm going to go as far as to say that, if we count the 4 current Andretti cars plus Daly and then basically plus Herta, who's basically in an Andretti car already, so they're going to have 6 cars at Laguna Seca. I'm going to go as far as to say that he will finish amongst the top 3 out of those 6 at Laguna Seca. So we'll put that one down, and then everybody can laugh at me later if that's wrong.
I can't wait.
I'm not betting my hair.
We like to laugh at you.
Not betting my hair.
Okay, so actually on that news, let's go ahead and move into Pocono, and Connor's racing there also. So he is going to be with Carlin again for Pocono and also for Gateway. So looking forward to seeing what he can do there. I think it's going to be a fairly good showing. So the top 5 finishers from last season at Pocono were Rossi, Power, Bourdais, Dixon, and Newgarden. So that could be real interesting for the championship, which right now Newgarden is leading Rossi by 16 points. Pagenaud is trailing by 47, and Dixon is trailing by 62. So who do you think is going to do good?
I'll go first. I think anytime we go to Pocono, the guy that I always 100% pick, no matter what, is Will Power. And I think that for some reason, Pocono just seems to be it's like, honestly, it's his best track. It's not a road course. It's not Indianapolis. To me, it's always just been Pocono where he's been so solid. And to me, going into the weekend, I have really high hopes for Will Power.
I'm glad you picked Will Power, because if I was going to pick him, and every time I've picked him this year, he hasn't finished the race or has had something happen where he's been finished a couple laps down. So I'm sure Will Power and faux Will Power, thank you immensely, Team Penske. But on a more serious note, I'm going to go with Graham Rahal. He had a couple good years in a row with Pocono. He got taken out in an accident by Tristan Vautier on a year where it really looked like he was going to contend for a podium finish that weekend. So I think Rahal is going to surprise us after not really having the greatest of Pocono showings last year.
It's not a terrible pick, actually. I'm going to go with Rossi because, as I talked about last week, and I think the question was something along the lines of who needed the break the most. I think that Rossi needed it the most, and I think he will have got his head screwed on just the right way, that he's going to come in and he's going to be fighting and he's going to show Newgarden what's up. So I'm going to say that Rossi is going to be my man for this race. Now, of course, on the flip side of that, we got to know who is going to struggle this weekend.
I'll take this one. I'm going to go with, unfortunately, Connor Daly, or maybe both of the, God, what is their team name? Carlin. I was going to call them the Chiltons, which I guess maybe isn't really that far off anyway. This is Pocono is a tough place. It's a place that Connor hasn't had great success at. Obviously, Kimball had a podium there back in 2013, but hasn't raced in, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks at this point. I don't even remember the last time he raced, to be honest with you. So I just feel like that combination just isn't setting you up for a very successful weekend.
Yeah, I was going to pick Kimball. So my backup on that is going to be a guy who has done very poorly the last couple of years at Pocono and Takuma Sato. Just, that one year, it was 2017, I think, where he had the pole and it was like, oh, yeah, here we go. He's going to do very well. And he just sunk through the field. Not quite sure what happened there. So to me, the results haven't been there the last couple of years for Sato at the track. So unfortunately, based on what history tells us, I don't think Sato's going to have his best day.
So I guess I'm taking the low-hanging fruit, which isn't terribly unusual. I'm going to have to say poor Marco Andretti is going to struggle. We all know that ovals have not been his thing this year, which is shocking because usually they are pretty good on ovals. So I think Marco is going to have another real rough day. I don't know if it's going to be quite as bad as Indy or Texas because it would be really hard to have a day as rough as that. But I didn't think he would have the day he had in Texas. So I guess there's that. So I'm going to go with Marco, unfortunately. And I think Kimball's going to shock you too. I don't know. I have a good feeling about him this weekend. So championship wise, the 4 guys, because we've narrowed it down to 4 now, have had some pretty good averages at Pocono. Just to give you this information, Newgarden's average finish there is 4.33 in his 6 starts. Rossi's is 8 even, and he's had 1 win and he's only started 3 times, so that's pretty dang good. Pagano, he's also started 6 times. His is 8.16, so not super great for him. It's going to be a struggle for him. I think he's not going to be down there with Marco by any means, but it's still not going to be super easy for him. Dixon, on the other hand, he's got 6 starts also, and he has 1 win and it finishes an average of 5th. So I think it's going to be a really, really close race here for the championship as we start to wrap up. This morning we did talk with Ben May. He is the president, and he was telling us some interesting facts about what they do for their fans. And this is kind of a side note here. I would love to be going because there's a carnival, like a full-on carnival there, and I'm kind of upset I'm missing it. So, Mike, you're going to take advantage of that, right?
I don't do the whole rides thing, but I will take pictures of the carnival.
Oh, that's basically the same thing.
That was the most disappointing thing ever. So thank you for that.
So I'm sorry to disappoint you immensely, but yeah, good point on the stats there. I think you could easily see all 4 of the championship contenders, fighting for a top 5 finish during the race.
Well, hang on a second. Jess said that Pagano's not going to be back with Marco per se, but if memory serves me correct, I think Marco beat Pagano last year.
Yeah, but that was last year. Marco's really struggling this year with the ovals.
Okay, but name a year in which Marco hasn't struggled.
2011.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. But out of those 4, I mean, obviously Newgarden's got the best stats minus just missing a win. And then, with Rossi, I mean, he's had 3 starts, and one of them was him getting wrecked in the pits. So it's really tough to tell. But I think out of those 4, I think Rossi has the best chance, which is what Jess was saying, too, in her prediction. So, yeah, some good stats for sure. We got time for one fan question this week, and it's from one of the best human beings on the planet, David Lighting Jr. He's also a Patreon member, very loyal one. We appreciate all of his support and his messages in the group chat. Always some good feedback there. He wanted to know, it's kind of a preamble to this, there's been a word on the street that Pocono, and I think this is according to Adam Stern from what he's been hearing, but Pocono may do this deal with IndyCar where they actually host a race once every 3 years on the IndyCar schedules. They wouldn't be an annual event. It'd be every 3 years. Definitely a new take on things. Apparently it's something they used to do in the past, I think maybe with USAC. So David wanted to know, based on what we've heard there, do you guys see this as a viable option for IndyCar and Pocono moving forward, given that the future of Pocono may be in doubt for next year's schedule?
It's definitely a really interesting idea. You could kind of package it as, hey, the Northeast, I don't know, some sort of Northeast thing where they rotate between Pocono. Next year they go to Watkins Glen, and who knows? Obviously this is no rumor. It's just me thinking out loud here. But is it viable? Yeah, if people can only go to Pocono once every 3 years, maybe it drives up the attendance a little bit more. And if you can get a Watkins Glen or New Hampshire or another racetrack, I know these are all tracks that David mentioned when he was asking the question, by the way. I think it's definitely a very interesting idea.
Do I think it's an option? Yes. Do I think it's very viable? Not particularly. It would be kind of a logistical nightmare as far as the point system goes. It would almost have to be kind of like an all-star race type deal where it's not a points paying race, just because it would, in my opinion, again, it would just kind of throw things off. I feel like if it was only once every 3 years. But do I think it could happen? Sure, why not? I mean, if it's gonna help attendance there, and it's gonna help, make things easier for both the track and IndyCar, yeah, why not? But I think it would be difficult to make it a points paying race. It would be interesting to see what would happen, though.
Yeah, I think it'd just be weird for fans, like, for example, I mean, Indy's probably not the best example, but let's take Road America. They're very insistent on keeping it kind of sort of the same weekend every year in June, and that way there's consistency and fans know, like, oh, yep, around this time next year it'll be back. And so for fans going to Pocono, going to race and be like, oh, yeah, it's not going to be here for the next 2 years. I don't know. That's kind of weird. So I'd be willing to try it. I would just be, maybe less optimistic about if it would actually work in the long run per se. But it would be cool to see, like Mike mentioned and David mentioned, cycling, like, hey, Pocono's this year, and then next year it'll be Michigan, and the year after that it'll be Cleveland, because why not? So I don't know. It'd be cool, and it'd be probably well received on Miller's Mailbag, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, you're definitely right there. So with that, it is time for everybody's favorite end of the show segment.
And now it's time for Pit Lane Parlay's Pitfalls of the Week.
So I'll dive right into it this week. I am going to pitfall Haas F1 again. Everybody's favorite Haas F1 boss. I'm really, first off, side note, I'm really sad that I can't pitfall something Rich Energy related, because apparently they've dropped off the face of the planet in the last month. It's really disappointing. I'm sitting here wearing my Rich Energy t-shirt as I talk about it. But they're, in talking about their car issues, Gunther Steiner believes it would be easier to solve his team's problems if the car was just slow. Well, the car is slow because the tires don't work. They can't get the tires to work. So I just feel like at this point, he says the car is the strangest he's ever worked with. He's just pulling out his entire bag of excuses when he really just needs to say, we screwed up and we're going to look forward to next year. But he's even screwed that one up. So I have no faith in Haas F1 right now.
No, wait, but just hear me out for a second. What if they designed the car while not factoring in the tires?
I'm sure, like he said that a couple weeks ago, that they will end up worse than Williams.
He is.
What if they were like McLaren and they actually told us what they were screwing up?
That would be too logical.
I mean, come on, Jess.
I know.
You're silly.
I am.
I'll go next. I got Red Bull. Red Bull's F1 team made the announcement this week that they were going to be replacing Pierre Gasly at the Red Bull team with Toro Rosso driver Alexander Albon. And then so Gasly will be going down to Toro Rosso to replace Albon for the remainder of the year. And it's just such poor driver management, in my opinion, because they did this same crap with Danny Kvyat when they escalated Verstappen up. And, you know, in their defense in that one, Verstappen has panned out. I mean, it did take a year or two, but he did pan out. I know he won his first race with Red Bull, but, you know, it wasn't all kittens and rainbows there for a while. And it's just the same sort of, you know, you get up to Red Bull, you got 10 races to prove yourself or else in a team that clearly favors one driver over the other quite heavily. And so it just seems like when drivers come in to that team that they're just going to be up against it when it comes to trying to prove that they're at the same level or better than Verstappen. I mean, in my opinion, I think Daniel Ricciardo is one of the most talented drivers on the grid, and even he seems, you know, kind of could see the writing on the wall when it came to the politics at Red Bull, so much to the point where he just wanted to leave. And I just think that their philosophy is a little wrong. I would have, you know, Gasly did not have a very good year. I'm not going to defend him per se, but I wish he would have had more time to kind of prove himself. And I think this kind of driver swapping and whatnot's going to come back to bite him, because I'm not sure too many drivers are going to want to get in there. And, you know, Albon's going to be on a very short leash for 8 races, and he's going to have to do the most with the opportunity to try and stay with the team, because if not, they may just look at someone else for 2020.
I can't argue any of that.
Perfect reason why I said the chances of seeing Pato back is 0.
But his chances of going to Toro Rosso just went up a little, maybe? Question mark.
Still doesn't have those points he needs for
that's
his
right.
super license, but we're getting there.
God, that's just tough. Don't remind me about that. That's another pitfall for another day.
I know. All right, so I'm going to jump into mine. Going to make it short and sweet. I didn't actually watch this race, but I read this and was absolutely blown away. And it's Michigan last weekend, and Team Penske, they finished 17th, 19th, and 24th. But shortly before that, they were 1, 2, and 3. And they led a combined total of 121 of the 200 laps, because all 3 of their cars, all 3, ran out of fuel. So Team Penske, really? That's not very Team Penske-like.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to play a soundboard clip here of another Jess statement that I think applies.
He's getting a big fat F. Yeah.
Well, to me, it comes back to how many times at Detroit did I say, you know, that's not very Penske perfect of them.
Oh, it was like, that had to have been rough. Like I said, I didn't watch it. Unfortunately, now I wish I would have, but yikes.
Yeah, I did watch part of it, and then I dozed off and woke up and the race was over, and I was very confused why none of the Penske guys were up front like they were when I was still awake. But yeah, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. The special interview with Ben May, president of Pocono Raceway. If you're listening on release day, which is Friday, will be out Saturday morning when everybody is starting at Pocono. So come and make sure to check it out. And if you're at Pocono, Mike Knapp and I will be doing a live show during the autograph session Sunday morning at 10:30. Come find us. I've got prizes to give away and plenty of them. So come on by, and Jess, feel free to sign us off.
And guys, keep your lug nuts tight.